It was just so normal that I would be expecting to pay a couple tens of thousands just for an education. Today we're going to be comparing European and American conservatory training. I'm taking this from personal experience, and we have a guest here, Sumina.
Hello.
Who is from Europe and studied in America.
Yes, born and raised in Switzerland, studied in Berlin.
So today in this video, we'll be breaking down 5 major points that we've learned the differences between the two systems. And if you're interested in just knowing what it's like to be a student in both continents, then definitely check out this video. Stay until the end. I'm sure that you're going to get some valuable information.
Also, we have made a video on my channel, so go check that out as well if you want to know what we wish we knew before going to Juilliard.
And living in New York City. Let's get started.
Yes.
The biggest difference is cost.
Oh my god, it's hard to talk about the cost itself in just a few minutes.
That's a major difference between the two different continents.
Yes.
So in America, cost of education can range anywhere from $15,000 a year up to $50,000 a year. It's really common to be paying those prices just for an education. The cost of tuition is so high that students can no longer afford it, and they're taking out huge student loans. I know that many parents start saving up decades before they even have a kid with the College 529 program, just because the amount that it costs to send kids to college is just so incredible that they have to start saving at such a young age. However, in America, there are scholarships out there. I think there are opportunities, so I don't want to scare anyone from avoiding to just applying to a music education in America. In addition to the tuition, there's also usually textbook fees and living costs.
So many added fees. That was like such a mind-blowing moment for me when I actually got here, or like they actually sent the letter before I actually enrolled. I mean, I thought that was covered in the fee, but it's not. So those are all extra fees.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to get a higher education in music in Europe?
I mean, growing up in Switzerland, first of all, we're very lucky in Switzerland, I have to say though. But also in Germany, for example, a lot of it is government subsidized. Also in my experience studying in Berlin, which I went to the Hans Eisler Academy of Music, to the Hans Eisler Hochschule für Musik, Hans Eisler in Berlin. It's a mouthful. There, for example, my tuition cost per semester, granted, you have to pay this twice a year, was, what was it, like 300 euros per semester. This also includes the subway pass that you can use for the whole city of Berlin. But that was my school fee per semester.
You know, for me, just being an American, it was just so normal that I would be expecting to pay a couple tens of thousands just for an education.
That's another thing that I've realized. A lot of people in the US don't even know that over in Europe, education is almost free. You know, so they just stay here because they think, why would I, like, you know, have the extra cost of flights and be in an environment that we don't know how much it's going to be. But actually it's almost like the same cost, if not less, if you consider like the cost of living in each city, etc. FYI.
Second point that we're going to talk about today is the time that it takes to get a music degree in these conservatories. So in my experience, being in an American conservatory, it's pretty conservative in the sense that it tries to mimic college education. So getting a bachelor's degree, there's a time frame of 4 years. There are always exceptions if something happens in your personal life, but it's pretty standard to finish your education in 4 years. And then for your master's would be 2 more years. And then if you want to get to a doctoral degree, then that's anywhere between 2 years of coursework and an additional amount of time to finish your dissertation.
Yeah,
but
it's sort of in a time frame, right?
It's time frames. And I think in some ways, we in America, they try to mimic the college experience as if you were going to any other university so that you all graduate in the same time.
Yeah.
But from my experience in Europe, it's very different. You guys stay there forever.
The longer you study, the better. That's kind of the motto there. Like, not gonna lie, I've known people who were doing their masters, like their second master or something at age 31. In the end, also what we have in Europe, don't quote me on this, but my school, for example, they offered something called an Urlaubssemester, which kind of translates into vacation semester. So basically what it does is you can have the lessons with your teachers, but you don't have to take it like the curriculum in terms of the theory and the extra credits that you have to have in order to finish. So a lot of people will study for like 3.5 years, and then they will just be like, I actually feel like I have so much more to learn from my professor. I want to take an Urlaubssemester, and sometimes they'll even do 2 Urlaubssemester. It's like kind of, it's crazy. Yeah, so you can sort of push your graduation out, and that's not frowned upon. Here it's like you want to graduate, you want this degree, you know, to show your excellence. But in Europe, it's like, so what if it's a year later? Because it's not necessarily about the certificate. So
I think it's definitely here in America, there is that concept that we have to graduate as quickly as we can. It's encouraged that one goes to college a little bit earlier and finishes earlier. It's like the youngest person to ever graduate from their master's degree.
I do have to say, I see a lot of like American work culture and how people basically want to start working so eagerly and start their careers as early as possible so that they can, you know, make it as early as possible.
I mean, that's not a common mentality in Europe, is it?
No, I don't think so. My sister studied in 2 different places. She studied in Berlin, her second master, while she was doing also in Paris as well. But then she realized that back and forth at the same time was too much. So she decided to only do the Berlin second master.
But also let's talk about the semesters.
Yes.
So this is a big difference that I just learned about how the European school system works when it comes to semester length. In America, it's very common in conservatories to be 15 weeks and then 15 weeks, and then the summers are usually about 4 months long. And students would usually go to summer music festivals, whether that be in Europe or in America or Asia, but that's additionally an informal additional semester. You just don't take it in your host school. Whereas it seems like in Europe, it's not as clear cut. It rolls over throughout the entire year.
Yeah. Well, sort of, first of all, like also festivals, a whole other topic we could get into another video. Yeah, but festivals in the US are like usually minimum 1 month. In Europe, one summer I went to 4 different festivals because each one of them was only a week or 2 weeks. That's the norm.
Where we met was at the Verbier Festival, and it was literally 3 weeks long.
It was intensive as hell.
Really intense.
But it was like...
We didn't get any
quite
sleep.
Short. Yeah, no, sleep was not our priority.
No.
But yeah, like 3 weeks. Verbier Festival Academy is like 3 weeks.
Yeah, but
that was a long one in Europe, and that's... 3-week masterclass in Europe is not normal.
The next thing that's a huge difference between American and European conservatories is the way we approach student life and the lifestyle.
I like this topic.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want to start it off with what it's like in Europe?
Oh, well, first of all, we don't really have dorms. Great Britain might be a different thing. But if we have something like this, it would be called student housing, but it's not specific to one school. So that's what dorms would be, right?
I mean, here, I think it's pretty common to have some sort of dorms. I think not all the conservatories had dorms. Curtis Institute of Music, which is where I went for my bachelor's degree, did not have a dorm until, I think, 2011.
Didn't know that.
Even that was quite a big revolution. All the conservatories more or less have some sort of living arrangement, whether that be a dorm or a housing situation, but it's really quite rare, it seems like, in Europe to have those designated student living places.
Yeah.
And I think that also is because I think a lot of the conservatory system in America is trying to mimic the university way of living, having those frat houses. I don't think there are frat houses yet.
New York's different as well.
And also the age that you would be hanging out with, or your group of friends in general, would actually be pretty similar to your age range. Whereas I think in Europe, it's pretty common to see like an 18-year-old hang out with a 21, with a 25.
It's very mixed, usually, in my experience.
Yeah, whereas for me, I don't think I had any friends that weren't either 1 year above me or 1 year below me, but no freshman would hang out with me if I were a senior, for example. Or we would always...
You don't dare to hang out with the great Timothy Chooi.
Maybe I was too intimidating.
Yes, yeah, very scary.
Another thing I would say is student lifestyle. I feel like in America, there's a lot of interest in making sure that there's time to pursue hobbies and exploring other interests. So whether that be something like a cooking interest or drawing or airplanes or whatever, which I love also, I was encouraged to also explore those aspects of my life and interests, where it's
really cool.
Really cool, I think. And actually, from my experience, a lot of conservatory students, even though it's such a specific type of education, many of them don't actually pursue a career in music, where
it's interesting,
in Europe...
Yeah, I feel like in Europe, I have to say, I barely knew any non-musicians. That already tells you a lot of what you need to know. Because I feel like everyone was so in this scene, in this industry, and not necessarily in other, like they didn't pursue other interests in that way. That I'm not down talking about
But
this.
it just kind of sounds like a dream also, just to be able to be really good at one thing and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and all your friends are on the same wavelength in terms of like thinking that as well. I feel like that's something that you can really connect about, you know. However, one thing I loved, for example, about going to Juilliard was also they had like, I didn't notice for the longest time, but they had these like clubs. So for example, like a LGBTQI.
Yeah, there's a Christian club, there was Asian American club, there was...
I didn't even know that. There's so many extra clubs to go to just to pursue other interests as well.
Let's go to the fourth point, which is the expectations that school has for us as music students.
Yes.
So being at Juilliard, and maybe not even just Juilliard, but I think conservatories in general, there is a high expectation that you're going to show up for your classes and that it's mandatory. You have to calculate how many absences you're going to use before you start getting your grades lowered, or if you're out for too long, then you have to consider getting a leave of absence.
They will fail you.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah, you're expected to be there, and you're expected to go to every single class, and you have to show up on time. If you're late for more than 5 minutes, you're gonna get a deduction in your grades. But tell me about Europe.
I would have to think about if they ever took our attendance. And like, you know, it's just a different mindset because classical music, like, it is very performance based. So practical experience is, I mean, I think everybody can agree on that. In music, practical experience is so valuable, and if not the main thing, right? In America, it's a little more academic. I've never had to write so many papers and like block out time for finals week and etc. Like, that never really occurred to me when I was, at least in my personal experience. What I would do also is at the very beginning, the first class of the semester, I was gonna be there. And in that class, I would have a list of every single day that I'm not going to be able to make it to class, hand it to the teacher after the first class and say, listen, I really want to do well in this class. Here are the dates that I unfortunately have obligations on. How can we work together to make this work?
The last thing that we're gonna just mention to you about the differences is the overall education and how it sets you up for a career. So definitely in America, I've noticed that in the conservatories, there's a huge emphasis on how to be an entrepreneur and how to really make the skills that we have as musicians into something that we can actually live off of. We have these classes about music entrepreneurship, but in Europe, how is it like? Do they prepare you to make a career, or is it more about like get an audition, be a soloist?
I must have missed a chapter if that happened. So in Europe, it's a little different. There's an emphasis on purely music from my experience and from what I've heard from my friends back in Europe.
I would just say just a few more things that I consider is that maybe it's more about the culture more so than the actual education system. But I would say that in America, there is a strict and very clear definition of ranking of where you graduated from. I don't know. I mean, for us, it's like, are you in the top 5 music schools, or where'd you go to school? That also happens in universities. Did you go to Harvard? Did you go to an Ivy League? Did you go to
UC, whatever?
Yeah, UCLA. Did you go to
U
Michigan? It's a school, and the name of the branding of the school rather than the actual education that you've got. Whereas in Europe,
it's definitely like that's why we have so many master classes that are very short. You get a taste of different teachers, if that makes any sense. So in the end, it's mainly about which teacher do you study with, even if that is in the middle of nowhere, you know? Like, it doesn't matter where it is, which school this teacher teaches from, as long as you love their craft and how they teach, like, you know, their pedagogical skills, etc., then you will be sucked into their class.
Exactly.
If you get in.
So this is the end of the video today, and I hope that you enjoyed understanding the differences between an American versus a European music conservatory education. These are points that we found really important, and of course there are many more small nuances between the two systems.
We're sort of limited to East Coast, Switzerland, Germany, Canada. So please do drop it in the comments, your own experiences, if you agree or disagree with something that we have said, because there are so many more experiences, obviously. So yeah, let's get a dialogue open.
Yeah, and follow us on our social media handles. We really appreciate to hear from you, and we read all your comments. Maybe not always reply, but we do read your comments. So we'll see you in the next video, and thanks so much for watching today again.